Да, Валера, я тебя наблюдаю.
They should therefore be infrared beacons because they are so very close. Yet no other satellite has ever seen evidence of these objects. This includes a vast array of Department of Defense satellites as far as I can learn. Because these objects are being bombarded by high energy cosmic rays, we should get a tremendous amount of heat. Dr. Nuth suggests 300 K, which should make them infrared beacons. But NASA's infrared satellites, COBE, IRAS, and ISO, can't see these objects. Again, this tells me something. It tells me I'm looking at a very high energy quantized object that's only visible in the near and far ultraviolet light spectrum, but not visible in the lower spectrum. So I detect possibly we're looking at some sort of an extraterrestrial intelligence or possibly a UFO, but I haven't drawn that conclusion yet. In the game of process of elimination, we've eliminated space debris, we've eliminated shooting stars, and we've eliminated space junk because none of those things would be invisible in the lower spectrum of light. They would all be detectable at least in infrared and invisible and also in lower spectrum. But they're not. These things are only detectable in the UV spectrum. Nuth continues, it simply means that we are still looking for a suitable explanation. Frank's hypothesis has not yielded any predictions that could be verified by observation that have been shown to be correct and has many observable consequences that are demonstrably false. Until he has a satisfactory answer for why we do not see what we should see in the infrared, most people will continue to believe that his interpretation of his own UV observations are flawed. They will, however, believe that he does observe something. So again, NASA is admitting that they are actually detecting something that shouldn't be there. Other scientists deny the detection of these objects because they've never seen a high energy object before. They've never detected something that doesn't show up in infrared. And I detect the signatures written all over this that we're looking at a very high quantumized object, the very type of object that I think we should be looking for in regards to extraterrestrial intelligence. Water could essentially travel from one part of the solar system to the other and actually protect itself from the intense cosmic rays of the sun. But the only way water could do that is if these alleged water balls that are about 40 feet in diameter and 40 tons each had a phenomenal membrane or radiant barrier to protect it. Example, space shuttles the space shuttle is wrapped in an aluminum foil that actually bounces out radiant rays of X-rays and gamma rays and actually protects the space shuttle from being destroyed and overly radiated by these highly charged forms of radiation. A water ball is so vulnerable out above the Earth's atmosphere that without some kind of phenomenal membrane protecting it, it couldn't survive. But the only way I suggest that it could actually arrive from one point in space to the other, assuming that Dr. Louis A. Frank is correct in his interpretation that there's actually water in these balls, is as if they had this phenomenal membrane around them. You can imagine kind of a mirror-like or foil-like barrier. That barrier would shine and reflect off all of the very, very harmful rays and actually protect the water. But that would make it an intelligent thing. That would also make it a living thing. Czent Georgi, the Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and discoverer of vitamin C, has called water the matrix of life. Without it, life cannot take hold, nor could the evolution of life begin. Basically, all living things, including humans, are made mostly of water, but we have actual barriers. In the case of humans, we have skin, and that skin has pigment in it that protects us from harmful ultraviolet rays of light that are filtered out. Plants are made mostly of water. Animals have thick skin, but they're made mostly of water. So I'm not suggesting that some naked alien entity is actually flying through space and entering our Earth's atmosphere, but I'm suggesting that if water is surviving deep transits in space in such a small quantity, that the only way it could do it is if it had some kind of phenomenal membrane to protect it. But I can't prove that in this case yet because no one has actually captured one of Lou Frank's mysterious small comets or water balls or whatever we want to call them. At this point, most scientists agree that he observed something, but we just don't know what that is yet. There was one more peculiar thing about Dr. Nuth's last letter to me. It reads, Yet no other satellite has ever seen evidence of these objects. This includes a vast array of Department of Defense satellites as well and as far as I can learn. If the Department of Defense was looking for these objects, we must assume that they were also mystified, that someone at NASA was mystified about these objects. Because if they were water balls, why would the Department of Defense go looking for them? And if, as some scientists hypothesize, that there was nothing there and that Lou Frank made an incorrect interpretation of a signal, then why, again, would the Department of Defense use a vast array of satellites to look for these objects? We must assume that someone up at NASA, very, very high up, ordered the search and the effort to actually try to detect these objects on a vast array of more sophisticated satellites. And that would mean that they don't really believe that these things are just some sort of passing and unimportant phenomena.
Other environmentally interesting targets of opportunity during the day passes. Typically when the orbiter is on the dark side of the Earth, as it is now, at least for the next 5 to 6 minutes, the low light level black and white cameras are much better at observing the Earth's surface and the star clusters as the orbiter passes high overhead. When the orbiter moves within a daylight pass, the color cameras in the payload bay are used to get more interesting sights on the day side of the Earth.
The first object that we're looking at on this videotape, we have one of 3 incredible phenomena happening at the same time. So we're going to kind of break it down and start with each phenomena and kind of go into them a little bit. So the first thing we see is a bright fireball leaving the zero plane of Earth. Earth is over here, at about 35 degrees away from the zero plane and going straight up out into space up here. The object is moving across the screen. And we have to assume, what is this object? For one, we're looking at the space shuttle's black and white low-level cameras that can see into the near ultraviolet spectrum, so we may be seeing a quantumized object. But also, it's leaving Earth's gravity, and that's something that is impossible unless the object has internal energy in it, energy that's powerful enough for the object to actually escape gravity. So this object is definitely escaping the Earth's gravity, and that is simply cannot be a natural object. Any meteor, shooting star, or piece of space dust is going to get pulled into the powerful gravity of the Earth and burn up as it hits the Earth's atmosphere and disappear in a matter of a few kilometers, assuming it's a very small object. This object doesn't do that. It escapes Earth's gravity, so we have to assume that it has internal energy in it, and that leads us to the possibility that we're looking at a UFO. The second object we're looking at in this scene is called the high-speed turn. If you're looking up in this portion of the video monitor, you're going to see an object come in, make a high-speed turn, heading out into space, a very, not quite a 90-degree turn, and then it will be followed and pursued by another actual object going this way. So again, when we consider the physics of a solid object traveling at least a couple of thousand miles an hour, making a high-speed turn, and probably in the neighborhood of 20 to 30,000 miles an hour, the physics of a turn like that is actually impossible. For any physical object going that speed to make a sudden turn, the g-forces on the turn alone would destroy physically, actually, your entire physical body if you were inside of a spacecraft as we know it, would just smash like a pancake. You'd be spam in a can. You'd be dead. In fact, even a meteorite, a solid object making a turn like that, the explosion on the turn, the g-forces and the collapsing of matter would cause a nuclear fusion explosion. It would cause a massive explosion. And if this high-speed turn was caused by an impact, a collision with another object, and then deflected off of the object and made a turn, you should see a massive explosion at the point of the turn, and we don't actually see that.